where it could cause a bit of congestion with the public not actually getting the service, but connecting to the Wi-Fi, as well as some interference issues that can cause with too many networks. So that's the gist of the public Wi-Fi. The project started in 2016. The first 50 hotspots were installed, and the project at that stage was between Neotel, which is what Lit used to be called, and GDAT at that point. We were focused on providing service connectivity. And the aim at that point was to install at least one public Wi-Fi hotspot for every ward. So we wanted to diverse spread as possible. We realized then that 31 of the wards do not actually have West Cape government buildings, so we wouldn't be able to achieve the total ward coverage that we wanted. But we did see that the service was being used really well, and there was quite a big demand for it. So that led to an expansion of the project. So initially, when we had 378 hotspots scheduled to be installed, we then expanded that to now the project is focused on delivering 1,600 sites with the public Wi-Fi service. And we've also increased the data cap to, like I mentioned, 3 gigabytes per device per month, and there's an improved speed of 10 megabits per second. So it's quite a drastic improvement on the initial project. And in terms of the agreement that we've got with Liquid, Liquid is essentially it's their network. So they are running the infrastructure, they purchase that and install it. They maintain that network, so any sites that go down or vandalism of the infrastructure, they service that, and they manage and monitor the Wi-Fi network. So it's part of Liquid's bigger network. What the Western Cape government is responsible for them in terms of paying for a once-off installation fee at each site. And then essentially we cover a fee portion of internet connectivity for 3 things, like on 10 megahertz per second. And obviously we cover the fee government's access and the websites. Okay, so we've tried to prioritize these principles. So easy login to the service, there's no registration or sign up, and you'll see a bit later it quizzes here how that works. Free data, limited free data every month, so that's the 3 gig cap. What's actually panned out over the last period as well, Liquid were trying to commercialize their model. So to try and get some revenue to cover some of the costs of the Wi-Fi, they were trying to develop a data voucher model. So if you ran out of 3 gig cap, we'd be able to buy an additional data voucher. They haven't been able to fully implement that. So what they've done in the meantime then is give an additional 3 gig data. So as things stand, you can actually get 6 gigs of data per device. And we found that's actually adequate, which we'll see a little bit later. We've tried, like I mentioned earlier, we tried to focus on underserved areas that previously didn't have connectivity or that may not be able to afford some of the mobile data connectivity options that are in those areas. And we tried to maximize accessibility, like I mentioned earlier, by making a signal outside the sites that's 24/7. And normally these APs give a reach of about 100 meters. I have tested them a bit further, 400 or 500 meters in some cases. So it depends on if there's trees or other buildings in the way that can impact the signal. Okay, so at the moment there's 24/7 monitoring of the service by Liquid in their what they call their managed services operations center that's up in Joburg. We visited last week and saw the team that's overseeing the monitoring of the Wi-Fi hotspots, and they've got full-time support agents on shift work that address any incidents that are triggered. If anything happens on the network, an alarm and signal on their system, and they start addressing that incident. They are first line support service, so the first thing that they would do in our environment is check on power. So load shedding has been a big problem of the hotspots going down, obviously. And if that's not an issue, if there is power at the site, then they send a field services technician up the site to address the issue and troubleshoot and resolve the problem. If in many cases, well not many, every now and then a site owner does turn off the system. So one of the risks is that some of the sites do experience, I suppose, negative behavior by the community, or there was a bit of congestion with the community coming to the site. And sometimes a school principal or clinic sister would take the liberty of switching off the Wi-Fi hotspot. So we do then have an escalation plan that comes to the West Cape government side, or our project team rather. And we then go through the process that's explained on the bottom of the screen there, where we just touch base with that site. We explain the project objectives, try to try to get buy-in and understanding that this is for the benefit of the community in the areas. And then we have various options to shift the signal at the site or move the access point to a different area on that building. And we do also have the option of putting limited time zones. So shut it off, say it's 8 o'clock at night, and then only bring it up again at 6 in the morning or so. So there's no reason for people to be loitering there after hours. And then finally, if there's constant issues and we've gone through our full process, we do actually remove the access point. I think it's only happened in three instances across the last 5 years or so, and then we reinstall it with the site. Okay, so this is the progress of the rollout. I think you might have seen it in one of the concept committee questions, but we have, as things stand today, reached a total of 1,328 sites that have the public Wi-Fi service, so heading closer to that 1,600 total target. And we've got an additional 50 sites that are installed at the moment. So the AP is up on the building, but we're just waiting for that broadband 100 megabit per second upgrade to then activate the public Wi-Fi. So we're working a bit ahead of schedule to try and make sure that the service gets rolled out efficiently. And we're hoping to achieve all 1,600 hotspots by the end of October this year. So there's quite a bit of work coming out, and Liquid has committed to achieving that target. We've got the public Wi-Fi in every single one of our municipalities, and in 317 of the 375 water buildings. So again, as the infrastructure gets to the more rural areas, we will then be able to bring up the public Wi-Fi in those spaces. Okay, a few challenges and successes on this slide. So the Wi-Fi project, like we've been mentioning, is wholly dependent on the broadband upgrade. So it is susceptible to the same risks that are on the broadband. And some of those include waiving applications from municipalities that don't get approved or various installation issues. There's about 200 Western Cape government sites that are located in quite urban areas or affluent communities that don't actually comply with the objectives that we're trying to achieve with public Wi-Fi. So we've actually excluded those sites, which is why you would have seen the DG mentioned there's 1,911 sites on our broadband network, but the Wi-Fi project is only getting to 1,600. So that gives us that means we don't have to necessarily install these services in Magdalena or Camp Bay, etc. Some of the site owners don't actually want the service due to risks. They think that this will bring a lot of nefarious activity to their sites, and so there is some litigation challenges that mitigating action that should take through that. And unfortunately, the social ills that we experience in the country do affect us. So, like I mentioned, people possibly being inconsiderate after hours, which is why we have the time zone issue, and just not behaving appropriately in the public Wi-Fi hotspot. On the contrary, there are quite a few successes. So there's been a really big uptake of the service, which we'll talk through now, and particularly in those areas that we've targeted that have been previously underserved. And we've had some really great, at this point, anecdotal feedback about people citizens getting jobs and getting additional skills through the public Wi-Fi. More than Premier, when Premier was our minister, he ran a competition over the public Wi-Fi a few years ago, and we got some really great stories about how people were making use of the public Wi-Fi, coming into the system, getting teaching jobs, etc. So that's been some really great to see in the community. And as opposed to some of the issues around safety at the sites, we've actually seen some of the site owners have said that the public Wi-Fi has brought a few more people onto the ground, and therefore because there's more eyes and ears, it's actually improved safety, which is something that we possibly didn't expect in the beginning. So there is this differing opinion in some of the community. Okay, this provides a little bit of a map of where the service is currently installed. So they are centered at the Western Cape government sites, obviously, but essentially wherever you find some kind of a community, there will therefore be a clinic or a school, and therefore the public Wi-Fi is applicable, available for those sites. And there's an ongoing live map that gets updated as we roll out the service on the URL at the bottom there. So www.westerncape.gov.za/Wi-Fi, provide an overview of the project and the live map. Okay, just some interesting usage statistics from the public Wi-Fi. So in the last month in June, we had just over 270,000 total devices connecting to the service. And those devices use just over 250 terabytes of data. So sometimes it's quite hard to conceptualize because it's a really big number. But we have tried to bring it down to standard kind of mobile data costs. And roughly, if you look at Vodacom and MTN, people are spending around 100 Rand per gig, often more than that because they're buying smaller bundles, which are unfortunately more expensive. But if you translate 250 terabytes of data every month into mobile, the alternative, which would have been mobile data, we've essentially saved our citizens about 25 million Rand every month that the service is going. So that is quite significant for them. And I spoke earlier about the data bundle being 3 gigs. That's an additional 3 gigs, so 6 gigs in total. But we're finding that the average user only uses about 779 megs per month. So it's still well within that data allowance at the point. This slide gives you a bit an overview of the top 10 sites in terms of data usage. So in the top left, you can see it. Paladin Hospital, Retreat PHC, Stickland Hospital, Tigerbird Hospital. So quite a few of our health sites coming through that people are waiting there and queues often and are able to access the Wi-Fi. So it's serving a good purpose there. And then elsewhere, a range of sites from schools to libraries and kind of administrative buildings. And the bottom right, you can see the hourly trend, which kind of, I suppose, standard. So the network starts picking up from about 7 in the morning until 9 or 10 at night. But like I've mentioned, on a case-by-case basis, if the late night activity does become an issue, we have options to address that. What are people doing on the network? So this gives you a picture of the breakout from the internet to various sites. The big chunk there is YouTube. Unfortunately, we aren't perfect YouTube. It's a holistic view of kind of one website. We don't know what is happening on YouTube. So it could be, well, we like to think it's educational information. There are lots of kind of skills related things, all educational learning options and videos that are on the YouTube site. So, but obviously there's a big entertainment factor at play here. We can see some of the other sites like Facebook. There's Facebook video, there's Instagram there. So there's quite a bit of social media as well. We don't see that as a bad thing here necessarily. I mean, the point of communications nowadays is to connect. That is the world we're living in, and we're seeing it reflected in the data that's being used for the traffic that's progressing around.
Martin, thank you very much for that. People, welcome to you. And thanks for joining. I indicated to say earlier that you're also busy, with some other work in the legislature building. I think the key thing, a couple of key points that Mark made, for us, connectivity is the key thing, because there are many things that we can do. We can also use the platform to communicate, what we're doing as government, but it's also a platform where people can also start to communicate back, particularly with regards to our service levels. It's a form of education, and people feel that they're connected to the rest of the world. So it speaks to this whole concept of connected citizens. And I think as a government, that's also a key part of what we do. Chair, the next couple of presentations will be about what we're doing here. And I think Augie or somebody is going to do it. So Augie, I'd actually like you maybe, to just take everyone to each of these screens after you've done with your presentation. Chair, the members of the committee are most welcome if you want to get closer. And I'm sure you picked up the one slide that Mark presented, is that slide there. That shows you the entire province. But what it doesn't also show is obviously those kind of pops that I've showed in my previous, on one of my previous slides. So when Augie presents, you are most welcome to come close and see exactly what is happening in every part of this province. Okay.
So before Augie says anything, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm sorry that I was late. It's never good to be late to the standing committee. But it's also great to host you here in this Nerve Center room. It's an exciting place to be in. When you leave here, you feel excited about our province, you feel excited about our future. And if I can only make 2 comments following on Mark's discussion, and the one is the broadband investment. It's a big investment into the citizens lives of our province. And what is it that I would like to see as the eventual outcome? Well, the one is already happening. Because remember, the initial idea about broadband was let's invest in places where the private sector are not investing. Because they were connecting the center of Cape Town to the center of Joburg, to the center of Hong Kong, to the center of New York, to the center of Mumbai. But they weren't connecting Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha and Beaufort West to Hong Kong or to Mumbai. And but today, with that investment, what you've seen is you've now seen the private sector understanding the value of connecting citizens. We were told in the beginning, you connect your citizens, it equals GDP growth rate. And that's exactly what is happening because people can further education, they can find jobs, they can actually, you look at that YouTube. Some of that YouTube might be somebody watching some comedy thing or whatever. But you can learn so much from YouTube today. If you don't know how to change the tire on your car, go onto YouTube, it'll tell you how to change the tire of your car. You can actually take yourself as an individual to the next level. But the private sector is now investing across the Wi-Fi broadband space, which is really great because that affects pricing, brings prices down, and helps our citizens. I think the one other thing, looking at all of those dots, imagine what the next stage is going to be. The next stage is going to be, you'll be walking in the community as a neighborhood watch. You'll have connectivity. You'll see a crime going down. You'll report it into the system. You'll take a photograph of the criminal. And we'll build a safer society just through that. I think that's still to come. But I think we're nearly there. And that's actually what we need to also be doing, is enabling our communities from an economic and a point of view where they can improve themselves, but also making it safer.
Well, thank you, Premier. I mean, I had to go onto YouTube to learn how to balance scientific equations to help my daughter.
Thank you, Premier. On your last comment, I'm also quite involved with my own neighborhood watch, and we're quite notorious in. Fortunately, no longer mayor. But we take photographs of everything we submitted through to the city, and the city responds because if they don't know, they can't come and fix. So if we go to the slide, I've only actually got one slide. Can you believe it? So what is the purpose of this network infrastructure and operations center? It's all about visibility. Visibility is absolutely critical. We cannot manage what we cannot see and what we don't know. And we have to see it so that ultimately, and you'll see this set of slides rolling, anything that is red, it means there's an outage somewhere. And we respond to it. So whilst the presentation is on the day here, these guys sitting here are logging calls to our service desk. The service desk automatically escalates calls to people like Denzel, who's primarily at Groote Schuur Hospital, and they go and fix, and it gets done automatically. But ultimately, it's about visibility so that we can restore services as quickly as possible and that we can manage our services pretty well. We are independent. We do independent monitoring of all our services, or most of our services, but it's done independently of each unit. So we've got all the operational units all over the place. We've got CETA doing their thing, and contractually they're bound to deliver services to us. We've got LIT that is contractually bound to deliver services to us, and we've got others. But this provides an independent view of what is actually going on in our IT landscape, and we respond immediately when the outages and services are restored. If a hospital goes down, we log a call, the guys go out there, they fix it, and that's the plan. If a user can't work, the same thing applies, and that's what we do. So independent monitoring of our network, our broadband points of presence, our network infrastructure, our computer services across all our buildings at WCG with a focus on hospitals, clinics, because they generally 24-hour services that we've got to provide, and all our other sites. Complementary to this is we do have a IT desk, dedicated desk for the school for cooking, as well as another monitoring piece that we've got in Hell's River, where they focus on schools. So we still see the overall picture, but they focus primarily on all the detail of schools, and they escalate everything through our service desk so that we restore services as quickly as possible. We monitor our key systems, we monitor our internet connectivity, we do special investigations where there are IT problems, and the service, very often the private sector wants to sort it out, we get a team together, and together we then sort out and resolve as quickly as possible. We also have a lot of actions and interventions that take place from here, because we're seeing things in order to restore services or improve services and so forth and so on. And we both have a reactive and also a proactive approach with an increasingly focus on IT security. We've got another unit that deals with IT security, but also it plays into the space. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Chad, who's the center manager, to actually give you an idea of what he's actually monitoring. So Chad?
Morning, everyone. Yeah, so we are going to be starting at your left-hand side over there and kind of story about everything that you are seeing. So as Bodhi mentioned, and thank you so much for the intro, we are the monitoring partner for provincial government, looking after the corporate network and the library services library network, which includes the e-sectors that the BU mentioned and some of the things ongoing. We were involved with the school, but as the Bodhi mentioned, that is now sort of as a dedicated team out of Belgium. But we do still keep an eye on what the footprint is in terms of deployment. And that's what the first view on your left and far left is actually giving us. It is just a basic view of what is in terms of the footprint, connected buildings, what is currently unavailable or down, what is having an issue in terms of either they're reporting slow or they're reporting high utilization, lots of traffic on the left. That is just a summary of a more executive summary that you would not need to action anything from, but you have all of the detail in a single view across your entire state, which is the key thing over there, not isolated and siloed over that side. The next one, the one we're seeing with all these lines that are connected, and the DG actually mentioned these input to implementation. That's the box, the point of presence. Each one plays a particular important role to provide the network services to the entire province. What we then keep eyes on here, this is provided by the CETA team, which is because the network center over here is for everyone to use, not only the dashboards and everything that we create. It is, if there's needed visibility in an area, we will power them, because it's not just about, what we can show on the screens at the end of the day. So when there is an issue, if something goes red, if something goes amber, usually it leads to an action, either from our teams over here or from the service provider. Because we have access to it, we all work together to give our citizens a better service at the end of the day. We would let them know that, look, we do see this issue, they can confirm it on their side, and we get the teams together to actually resolve as quickly as possible. The one thing that I forgot to mention is the screens that are ours. When I say ours, it is developed by our own team. We're based in Cape Town over here, so we are locally and proud in SA. So where the dashboards are powered up by our engines and our platforms, they will be the other one that we leverage from the different service providers. So like CETA, which is from looking at the internet side, and also the various considerations where we just not necessarily going to have access to. So now not our mandate or scope to be involved in that. We look at where the clients connect each other, corporate building that service building. This is just one of the teams, operational views that's used by the WAN team, the team that makes sure all the buildings are always up and running, always connected to the network. It's just looking at the total site count and then what is actually an issue. When something does get an issue, it gets picked up by the team over this side. It gets logged to the service desk, as you mentioned, and then it's just a view of how quickly it can be resolved. Depending on the issue that goes in, you would see some come up and go within minutes. They are resolved again. Some might be a more widespread or more severe issue that even needs infrastructure to be in place, or depending on the severity of the case, then that would generally flag. We generally have a longer time to give, we can call it that, but it gets resolved as station as it could. Always important is what's happening towards our internet service, because everything these days is put on input, whether you're talking about our Microsoft email or everything else, like Teams. We need a good internet response and also eyes on the amount of bandwidth available to make up a good performance service on that side. And this is another example of one that's presented by the CETA team. We just make sure that from a usage point of view, there's some warning lines that they have across the screen, and we never reach that peak. If we are nearing that peak again, we'll engage with the delivery teams over there. So it's all just a big one. We have to family most of the time. Mark actually put a big focus on the public Wi-Fi service. What we're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen or all over here is the Wi-Fi service of all the corporate buildings. So whether it's the hospitals, whether it's all the medical buildings where admin services run from, if they are connected to one of these access points that they connect to the corporate networks, we would find them from a how many clients are connected to the infrastructure. And you can't form single access point for too many because then your performance not something across all of them. Or we look at the amount of clients that's connected across the various societies, using the corporate wireless network, using the guest service. Again, it's a tracking, it's an auditing. When we need to report back to business at the end of the day, we can see exactly which of the access points we're running the artist in terms of clients connected. Maybe we need another 2 or 3 to just balance it out a bit better over there. But again, the data that we see here, as far as possible, gets translated into a business output. If it's an access point that's running congested, maybe we need to deploy a few more. Just going to take a walk over on this side. The main screen window that we see over here, this is generally the one where we would have these rolling summary, as Augie mentioned. Generally, there are a few other screens that are up here, but we guys will be in a state with this session. But again, it's covering different elements of the service that we provide over there. We have an eager eye, we have a close eye on all the assets that's deployed across the network assets, workstation assets especially, so that, from a correlation point of view, we assist the provincial government asset teams to do their verification. It makes life easier if you have an asset that's always talking back to you, it's online on the network. You don't always need to go physically visit the box to see a serial number, to see a barcode. If you have online platforms that just make it more efficient. Moving into some of the more, I would say the more technical things, we're looking at, I mentioned the workstations. It goes into the level of what is installed from a licensing point of view, how much capacity is there from the hardware involved, and then also the warranty and the life cycle of that workstation is also very important. The older the workstation is, generally the slower it will become, and we would start then having poor performance at a user base. One of the things that's very important in the corporate space, and we provide the service on the library side as well, what traffic, what kind of utilization is it eating the different buildings, and is it business traffic, is it unwanted traffic? Mark mentioned a big chunk of the applications on his network, it's YouTube. It makes sense because it's the general public, but we would generally see Microsoft Outlook, Teams, the different internal UCG web services that either the clients make use of or the corporate staff make use of to provide those services. Those are the ones we generally track from a performance point of view, from a volume point of view. Are they slow? Meaning, if I have a client or customer that needs to connect out in both ways, what will they feel be when they need to make use of that website or that website? The view that we have to the right over here is actually something that was born from an Augie and a Hilton idea. Long time ago, we just conceptualized it and probably don't remember. But the idea with this is it's a tracker of whenever we see a big construction site, we will always have that board that says X amount of days since our last accident, and we're very proud of that. This was a similar field, but looking at the various points of presence, the POPs, all 27 odd that there are these days. And it essentially is a tracker of when was the last time we had a major outage that one of these POPs went down. Because generally there are thousands of users connected to that point of presence, or there's close to 100 buildings, hundreds of buildings at times. So it's depending on the severity, and you can see just as an example. The last one that dropped was Beaufort West POP was a few days ago, 6 days ago, early morning. I think it was a power issue on that side. But it just goes to give us a view that if one of these go down, there are thousands of people that could be connected, and even a great amount of public citizens that couldn't be able to make use of the government networks or services doing that. Load shedding that we know can surprise us at any time. We'll get an announcement now that load shedding will kick in the next hour. And again, this was a view that was built by our teams to try and consolidate the events when load shedding strikes. What is a possible load shedding event versus what is a general network failure or general outage, so that you can easily identify where the focus areas need to be. If it's a whole big bang of outages in the one region, but yes, it is load shedding of stage 4, that is the zone affected. It is not understandable that those buildings might be connected, but they would be grouped nicely so that when it comes down to getting the incidents and the escalations going, there's good identification saying, look, that zone could well be affected by the load shedding stage we are in now. These are the buildings that could be affected. Or if we see buildings that are affected outside of the load shedding zone, that would generally be where the focus goes, because those are a network or a service provider failure that could be causing issues rather than just general power that's being out where we are. I'm sure we get above. So fully automated and updates connects to all the various public APIs that we need to, so that the rolling view of if load shedding is announced, it will get picked up into which stage it is, and then depending on the severity of the outages, that will all get grouped nicely and presented on the map view, which the team can then action from there on. The one to the right before I stop my little presentation is actually similar to this view over here. It's the GIS portal that all they are doing is consolidating data from us. So all the various outages and things that we see on the different dashboards, they consolidate it into their map view. From a rollout point of view across the province, similar to this, just with I think it'll probably be the same amount of buildings, but less infrastructure when it comes down to access points. But again, it's a case of what is unavailable for the public to use, what is running slow, what is running in terms of if there are errors and all those kinds of things on the links that could be affecting performance. And it's also, it's published into the Western Cape Gov portal. So it's a matter of it's easy access for the public to see as well. If I do need to go to this building right now, are they available to be used? It's just another way to, improve service and everything for that.
No, thanks, Chad. And as usual, Chad has been his very usual eloquence itself. Just to mention that we've got a lot more dashboards, we've got a lot more views, but obviously we can't give everything to you. We don't have the time. But with each dashboard that you see, we can actually drill down into glorious detail. That's what the technicians will normally do. They've also got access to all of these dashboards on the machines, and they can drill down to see that where their problem is and all the other stuff that goes with it. And just to mention that we're quite comparable to most of the banks, most of the big corporates. They're using similar technologies or the same technology as what we use. It's just that their content is different to ours. We've got our focus is to restore service as quickly as possible and all the other stuff that goes with it. But we also use this investment that we have in this monitoring to assist our asset management guys, for example, to find assets. So before they even start the annual asset, they get what we have, what we can see on the network. And they started with that without even going to the sites. So there's value that we've derived from this other than what we're supposed to do, because we start to enable other things. So just to give you an idea, we monitor at the moment about 24,000 workstations in hospitals and clinics and in our buildings, that excluding schools, because there's another couple of thousand there. We monitor about 4,000 devices. There are monthly reports that get reported, the weekly reports that get delivered on all of this stuff. And then we sit with the guys here once a month and we go through the high level of what has happened with that month. And we have interventions to improve our services all the time. So this is an ongoing thing. So thank you very much. We were quite happy to have you here. And we'd love to have you again sometime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hilton, do you want to say something before we close? Because I'd actually like, just maybe 2 minutes, just show us what's happening in the school environment. I mean, this one talks to the utilization rate, but maybe just go into one school so that I think the members can see what is it that you're watching on this sort of, in a school environment. Is that possible, Chad?
Yes, we just need to get into that.
It's still the case.
We'll have to pick up another view and put together.
Yeah. So an interesting statistic is that if you look at the data used by the education system, the schools in this province, the data used by the schools in this province is more data per month than the data used by all the schools in all the other provinces put together.
Put it another way, all the data that we're using as a result of broadband, because if you don't have broadband, you can't really, you can't do much. And CITES told us, I think we are more than the whole country put together. All the public service departments put together, because you've got the infrastructure, the speeds, and users just go absolutely mad. Schools go mad, clinics go mad, hospitals go mad in innovation, and all the other things that go with it.
So that shows the value of the investment.
Yeah.
Whilst you're busy setting up that, I just want to have Lionel give the committee and specifically the secretariat an indication as to what the process is from here when we go to purchase here.
Okay.
And then what we can do.
No, we can do that.
As Michael Benting, I'm the director, so the Provincial Development. We get to the hospital, expecting on the parking in the farm court area. So if you just mention part of the standing committee, then we'll let you in. Denzel, myself, Mark, and Ian will receive you. We'll spend some time in that area. That's where the public hotspot is. And then we will be received by the head of radiology, Nazlia Peters, who will illustrate some radiology imaging and what the broadband has meant in terms of the changing way in which they operate now. And that will be the visit.
Okay. PG, I just want to check with you because our there is a bit different from having the department in front of the standing committee. Our questions here now, we're not going to be able to pose because we're on our way to scale. But what we will then do is put it in writing and then send on.
I'm quite happy to do that. When anytime, I mean, that's normal, we respond to you comprehensively.
Okay. Do you have a time to be at the
At 11.
At 11. Can we pose
Yes.
one or two?
Yeah, no, of course.
Or can I give an opportunity to each member for one?
Yep, I'm happy with it.
All right. Women, careful. One.
All right, no, thanks. But first it's a comment. And who have such, especially who have such a quite effectively responding system in our province. We have seen it during years like that, how rapidly able to respond, assist with the data feeding, so which is commendable. But now I think we had a conversation with the chairperson enter, and one of the critical things is your establishment here in terms of equity. We have noted that it's predominantly male, and in terms of also looking at the gender and as well as youth and the balancing of different things. So if you can look at that, or maybe you might provide us with, maybe we just see the front, there might be a better that we do not know. But if we can get those kind of statistics, it will assist.
I'm going to take the round.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a very simple question. Have anybody ever tried to hack your system?
From our side, there are always attempts. I mean, because our system is hosted on the internet, like the Western Cape government service, you would always get attempts to get in. But for the past few years, we've been here for quite a while now. We have not had a breach at all. But I mean, because security is part of our game as well. I mean, to provide a safe and secure system that you can log into. You know, we see who gets attempted to log in, but they've never had a way to get in.
Just to qualify that a little bit, he's referring to this system here.
Yeah.
From an IT overall security portfolio point of view, for which I'm responsible for, unfortunately, for my past service. And when his father was born, we've had 2 security breaches. One we thought was serious, but with our partners, including Microsoft, we were able to thwart it quite quickly and we recovered without any issues. And then we had another partial one that occurred in our agricultural space, on 1 or 2 of their services. But because of the skills that had been transferred to us, we almost dealt with that on our own. But with 1 or 2 companies that we've got a contract, so just looking over our eyes and making sure that we're doing the right thing. But there was no compromise of data or anything like that. We're not immune to any of that sort of stuff. We've got a lot of software on people's machines that automatically detect and clean up machines all the time, etc., etc. We've now received quite a bit of investment from Treasury into IT security, and we're pumping up in the whole environment that we're moving towards a automated way of doing things. So the attacks get repelled. If they go through, it gets fixed and repaired and restored as quickly as possible.
Jimmy, I want to add, it happens all the time, thousands. I mean, when we get presentations on that attack, you freak out when you see it. But I mean, as you said, we saw what happened in the port. That sends cold shivers down your spine when you see it. We saw it happen in one of our municipalities. So that's, I think, what August just said now. I mean, I think the presentations that were made at our last budget process, we've substantially upped the funding on it. we know that it is kind of the next frontier that has to be protected. So, I mean, we've got excellent people that are on it every single day.
I think in one of our presentations to the, on a previous standing committees on IT security, we actually gave them numbers, how millions of attacks, we are receiving millions of attacks per month. And now we automatically just repairing. But there's always one that will go through at some point in time. The most important thing is how do you react and how do you restore? And so far we've been pretty successful. As I said earlier, we got all the tools that the banks, most of the banks use. The only thing is we don't have the budgets that they have. That's the only difference. But you know, sometimes you don't have the budget, you tend to work smarter.
Yeah. Chair, maybe just a quick response to member Trevor's question. It was almost like a preemptive thing. I mean, I asked the same question when I got in here, but I want to respond to you in saying that this is only a part of the entire institution. If we take it to Bell, you will see a totally different picture. The entire fourth floor is our IT staff. And in fact, I made a sort of a side comment to say to you that the two most important people within the CI program, which is the biggest program in my department, is actually females. And they dictate the entire space of what needs to happen from a performance perspective, et cetera, et cetera. So this only part, a very small portion of an entire team. But I mean, your point is taken. I've actually asked them this morning, we should get more females also into this space. Their response to me was that there has been females here and they've got promoted in the meantime. Yeah.
So can we tell them they not have to worry? We're not going to fire them.
So our chief security information officer reports himself, she's a female. And I think some of you have met that. On one of the comments that you made, Centrix is our partner that we use for this. And what they've got is a wonderful program for youth that they bring in. They bring in young graduates and they also tap into our the matric program. And so those those are deployed to us as IT. And they've taken quite a lot of them through the whole program. And this is one of the properties now the centre manager. So it's a pretty good program that they take. You don't hear about it. And they also focus on women, they focus on all sorts of things, you know, that they try and do. And they've been very successful with that, and we partnered with them as well. And we're partnering with others. I think Microsoft took, what was it, about 300-400 interns at one stage in the 1 year, and they trained them for 9 months. And they're all certified, and they're out there in the industry. So that's ongoing.
In fact, Hilton, how many graduate interns did we approve now recently for your component?
Graduate interns specifically 36 for this.
36 for this. Yeah, 36 graduate interns.
2 year period.
And for 2 year period, we've allocated it now 2-3 months ago to Hilton. And what we also do is, because our entry levels are generally on assistant director level, we get them in much cheaper. When they get after their 2 years, they can start to apply for jobs.
Okay.
And I mean, they run across the gender line, across color line, because we're in the business of building capacity.
Now, I regard them as my children.
Yeah.
Because I'm also aging. And when I see my interns that are interested in IT and they're coming to us and young graduates, you become like a father to them. To some of them, you also become a mother. And it's nice to see them going out of here, coming here totally confused, and then leaving here after a year, totally fixated on this is, I know what I'm going to do. And some of them have told us, sorry, we're not going to do IT. We're not interested in it. That's not what we thought was, but it's not going to be. And they go in another direction. But it does give them that sense of direction. They go further and study. And we've actually employed 1 or 2 interns that have come back to us after they studied and they were interested in IT and that sort of stuff.
I think the committee is also pressed for time. So I just want to allow the chair maybe just to ask all the members this stuff and then we can respond.
Just a comment from myself, a question, but the aching comment is, okay, you can accept that. Looking at the premier with all white hair and people with the breast open.
I don't know it.
But it's good to know, it's good to see, and just also to take note of the fact that the connectivity and communication in the disadvantaged communities is key. And it's good to see the inroads in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's very impressive. You know, I got a blessing of within some few weeks go to the South Wales Parliament in Australia and go to Sierra Leone. And if you have to compare what I've seen with what we have here, we are way ahead even from the side of Europe and the side of deep Africa. So the only thing that maybe I'm going to request that the chair to continue to put this on agenda so that the member can ask all the questions on that engagement. And also I can be able to be afforded to ask more questions. It's very interesting and I would love really to hear more and comparing to what we see as we go into the constituencies and with what we have. I think the concern that we have, it will be, from my side, it will be the end users. It cannot be here, everything is perfect, but the output, is it received where it's supposed to be, and how, to what extent is it maximized to the benefit of our communities? It's where maybe we have to look, how can we be innovative to raise awareness? Because most of the kids, I don't think they are aware that they are working through the hotspots where they can be able to access the information that they need for their school. So that is the section that we'll have to look at. And I think the next engagement is where I will ask directly some more of the questions through your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that was not 2 questions, it was just 2 comments, DG. It leaves me to say thank you very much for allowing us to enter this world and to have a insight into what happens. And I am glad that, I think it's you or the Premier who said that, you know, in regard to what we have here and the data that is used in our schools from this system, comparing it to the rest of the country, I almost wanted to say the rest of the world, but the rest of the country, we are light years ahead. And I think that we invest well in the Western Cape government. And I'm sure that if I ask, or if we ask, how do we compare to other provinces, it would be on the same vein as with the data used in schools. But I trust also that other provinces come to the Western Cape to see what we invest in and how they could apply the same for their provinces. But yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to every staff member, official here, for allowing us to be here. So we will leave you now and go to Grooteskier Hospital. Thank you very much, Premier. DG.
Thank you very much.
Mr. De Freitas.
Because then we need to look at the problems that we have. Okay, maybe from our side, I don't know if Premier maybe want to say something, or maybe I will say something and then we'll ask Peter. I want to say thank you for coming through. I mean, we were equally excited about showing you what we do. As I said in the beginning, it is about the citizen, and we're asking the hard questions to ourselves. So we're using this amount of data. Do we see equivalent increases in education outcomes? So those are the kind of questions. So we're now moving to the next level of information. And then maybe also just to indicate to you that, I mean, we help the other province. We believe in the system. If we all work together, you know, we make South Africa better. So we continue to have people from other provinces visiting us. And this team also going to other provinces to assist them to actually take this country further, particularly with regards to our frontline services. I mean, our broadband contract has been the first in this country. We've gone to the Eastern Cape to help them because they've gone with the same service provider. We've been to KZN and also to Joburg to actually assist them to take things further. So we in that game, you know, from a department perspective. But thank you for the role that you played and keeping us on our toes, and we will always endeavor to step it up, you know, for the citizen. Thanks.
Thanks, DG. And without repeating what you're saying, I mean, it's spaces like this that make me excited.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we continue improving. I mean, you know, that, you know, this tech world that we live in every day, you know, you put the system in and tomorrow there's a new system. So we ourselves are continually learning, continue trying to improve. But at the end of the day, whatever we do has to be for the betterment of the lives of our people. If we're not changing the lives of our people, well, then we must stop. We need to put the money into making it different. On your point, and I think the DG has answered it, but I'll tell you that KZN will be here this week. The reason they're coming here this week is to thank Minister Bradell and the disaster management team for all that they did during the floods. Because within a day of the floods, we had 25 of our staff in KZN. We sent 4 helicopters. We sent 25 vehicles. We had a second shift going. I mean, our team was in there right up front. You might have seen the photograph of the Premier of KZN standing there, addressing the media, and who was briefing him, but none other than Colin Diner from our disaster and his Western Cape government jacket. That looked quite nice. But I think 3 weeks ago, Premier Saul's office was here. That's not the first time that they've visited. The whole health department from the Northern Cape has got an agreement with our department. So definitely, I mean, what we do in this province, we do for the people of this province, but we also do it for South Africa. And to the standing committee, thank you very much. I mean, this is also what it's about. It's about you guys also seeing what we're doing, but then also asking those questions. So, you know, is this good enough? You might have seen something else that's better, and why haven't we got it in place? And I mean, I think also in the data stuff, we're only scratching the surface here. These guys can keep you busy. I'm not sure if there was anything, I didn't hear what was said earlier, but some people can speak longer than others in this, this organization. Maybe I should shut up now. Yeah, this is the stuff. If you can't measure, you can't manage. And like you see here, response times are critical. I mean, I was actually just saying to DG yesterday, I was seeing a presentation on a similar kind of room that we're establishing in partnership with our municipalities, with disaster management, with security, and it's with police, our LEAP officers, all of that together to make sure. And I mean, this screen here that you've just seen now is critical because we've seen what happens when there's a power outage and how it affects the citizens with crime. So that's the kind of data that our neighborhood watchers need ahead of time to say, or even if they get a message to say, the power's gone out right now, it is a load shedding incident. Sorry that the people doesn't know about it, but you need to know about it. Watch out for criminals. You know, we've got to be much more agile and much more responsive. But thank you very much, and good to have you here, and enjoy your visit to Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My assistant can go. No, you offered. You gave me some goodie there. Okay, are you live?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Maybe tilt to camera, please.
What you say?
I'll call you.
What? Okay, call me. Can you call me on my Sindley's phone?
Okay. Rose.
Signal. No, I'll see you now. I'm gonna unmute. Bye. Bye.
On site, and then we'll go over to the show us some exercises, how things are possible, and what typically would happen in a radiology section.
This is the contract stage. Yeah, we can go down the meeting, so you can say what you would like to see, and you can show you.
So maybe we go straight to the demo. If you could pull out an image for us. So typically, our difficulties are mostly according to the radiologist hospital, because a radiologist decides short supply and the academic hospitals will have access to radiology. And the future is targeting and professional and teaching capacity. But if you get to a hospital involved in those, it gets extremely difficult. And our broadband is very possible now to put agents. Why radiology is expected to be some solve for whatever big hospital, and then you will have to get the radiology company there. That means that radiologist can sit in the office and log into our system and diagnose the image, and I can forward which is the email back to the hospital, which the hospital attaches to the patient's medical record. And then the hospital or the GP or whoever duty in that division can do the diagnosis of the patient. So they have a confirmed patient experience before they actually do the patient. And then slows the process for outsourcing. But it's now possible to do the appointment. And it's now very possible by the image to that the hospital. The other big possibility is that you go to a clinic, you know the radiology book, but the doctor at the clinic can pull up the image from anywhere. Or you put in your patient number, they can see whether there are any images in the system for you. So I've been to a big hospital, there was an image, that doctor picked it up. And on the basis of that image, you got a diagnosis of that. Which typically before that patient would got patient transport to a big hospital, and sitting along to see the doctor there. And so we minimize that patient having to convenience by being able to offer many more services at the point of first contact with patient. If it is specialized services, yes, they get transported because of it, but the things that can happen due to broadband are now localized. And this system is the first. So the Phillips tracks which used at Red Cross Untitled Hospital. And there's a archive for those as well, but it is available against your patient number outside of these three hospitals.
Can you just do me a favor for say hard? Can you just hide the name? Yeah. Because I mean, we'll get us up. Yeah.
That I cannot do now. We have to anonymize our start the go and so we can't the live stream and all that to lower down.
Fine, I'll just, I'll focus on you.
So we are able to access one of our hospitals. It's in the here. The hospital that we deal with mostly were from some people in the hospital. That's what I have link. I'm a patient. I can show you a GP study. So we all our modalities are available. GP study and in year. Our doctors who committed to workstation in the reporting room. We can take you there afterwards. So here on all our general X-rays and one part of general X-rays that you can see. From this. And then I can show you some CT scans that we have access to.
What's the furthest point from here? From your list?
Furthest point as
furthest site.
Any other hospital site you can.
Yeah, but if you look at geographically, who's furthest away?
All the way to George.
Can you click on George just to show pull up something?
So
on the west coast as well, you have west coast sites. I see.
So all these hospitals are here. We do have a security alarming for each. We can try and open. I hope we do not. The system down. We don't generally deal with smartphone, but I can try for you. Yes.
And so this is the Phillips fax. This is an anti-web fax system. Use that the smallest. And then for the third, we got the tactful fax system in the regional hospitals. They are working on a new schedule for all sites to be on the same system going forward. And that
I'm going to provide the version details from this to show you that you are accessing the candidates. I don't want to get into details. And so I'm going to show you the CT scan. CT scan. That's all right. The CT scan is one most you know about in the third part. They do fast the body have single spots that we do the body as we image, and that image is a we put together and manipulate to really people. So I don't want to assume nobody knows, but from the chest that we're going up, chest all the way down the body, that's the logo we're seeing now. And you just orientate yourself as your kidneys. So these are the imaging that we do with the patient on the bed within a few seconds. And these images can then be manipulated, and the doctor can actually view these images in different planes or look at it like a CSP.
And that's not the tunnel, that's not the MRI.
No, this is not the tunnel, this is the donut.
Okay, this is the thing that moves over you.
The bed moves, so it's a donut like this. And if this is you on your bed, you move into the donut and the image as you move out, and the imaging is then computed and we can visualize. The tunnel that you're referring to is an MRI scanner. So I can show you an MRI image. MRI image of the brain. I'm moving from the bottom over to the top. You see the eye. The nice thing about so they are able to do an uncontrolled visualization of the patient's vehicle for the MRI scanner at times when the patient might not or cannot see and require control. With the CT, you are able to see the vehicle and you require control to provide control to the patient. What else would you like to see?
I think just talk about what happened before broadband, high-speed broadband was connected, and what happened after. And I think largely before broadband, everything happened on the network, and you could only see the local hospital, and it was very difficult to move beyond the site in terms of imaging and transfer of images. And I remember the early days when we sent people from Worcester Hospital down to Provincial. I think 3.5 hours for that file to be transferred, and then only the doctor could see it. Now, I suppose it's quite different.
Maybe I must go before that line. Way back when, imaging only happened at the big hospitals. And a patient had to be sent all the way here to have an image done. Patient had to wait for that appointment, imaging had to be done, patient was sent home, and then patient was called back for feedback. Then broadband started. The first time it happened was at Provincial, I think 2010. We started in 2010, we could image our patients, but it was really local, only at Provincial hospitals. Unfortunately, the patients still had to go to here the image, and that has evolved when Worcester and George they got their CT scanners. We could use some of the imaging, but it was extremely clunky. We said it took sometimes hours for that image to be sent through, and it also could not be visualized and the way you wanted to see it shown you earlier. Now, if I click that button and I don't see something in 1 or 2 seconds, I'm actually frustrated. You saw me from an hour we were log on to the smartphone. If in 3 seconds my landing page don't open, before the facts are understood. If the doctor in the ward cannot open the image in that amount of time, they also complain. So we have in the last 10, 12 years, it has evolved exponentially, and we have imaging at our fingertips, something that we didn't have. There's also what the consultants and the radiologists they do consult via the network about the patient, and the patient can be fixed consulting in another area and an opinion, which has been a great advantage to our patients.
Yeah, and something else I really wanted to get in, but I think the outside consultant is one of those things, but the various other things in the health space, we can standardize on applications, and every institution can have the same advantage because of the centralized platform. I know in the actual space, we built a vendor neutral archive. So irrespective of where you are, your images all go to our database and observe it. So even if the vendor leaves tomorrow, the image will always be available against the liquid occupation, irrespective of the new vendors that come and go. So those are things that we learned over time and that we report. But I think we often forget what we did before high-speed broadband. The last thing, what's the speed of the site link? One gig. So 1 gigabyte from here to Sweden and to the internet point like to the outside world. The major academic hospitals have 1 gig links, and that means that it's very little delay in
These solutions are now 2 big others. That's the stuff. So that is what one thing as I was speaking about. One thing we should come in the after that here. Video would be what that my chase they come.
For me, I can ask
Yes.
in this yes, quite interesting. So if you like for an example in a roadmap, with a roadmap, especially in George, and you're doing that here, and can they do a more diagnosis? Are they
Well, the other way around.
So that means that with the investment are busy with or using, what will be important now is to have the equipment in all health centers, and then you can have the specialist care diagnosis. It will be a cheaper service compared with
From the expertise point of view, it would be one consultant that would be an opinion of
the complex.
So when you buy it, you can then
The current policy is that district hospital, and only district hospital, Malmesbury is a district hospital, Paul, George is a district hospital, and Khayelitsha is a district hospital. And so the district hospitals take the referrals from the CHE and the smaller sites. And then the academic hospitals become for those complex things, the referrals come up to Provincial, Tigerberg, and Red Cross for pediatric patients.
That's a good one, because we have been talking about this issue, especially in the West Coast. I don't know if assumption or but all time when get most of West Coast, they find that they do have stage 4 made by the time that now if you have that means also what do they call that one? The question of like one of the tests, NH, whatever. They take the blood, whatever they so they all those things, they can go to the district that they don't have to that they can do and that process, and then now they can centralize also without them sending somewhere.
So the results are accessible. The initial results are within 1 point. Previously, you had to wait for that to be seen.
Yeah.
And even imaging
Now, previously patients would have an image done. Let's use the West Coast as an example. That image had to be physically taken with the patient at the appointed time the patient comes. It can be viewed and they can determine where to refer the patient to. So it does shorten the time.
Yes, I think we got it. So.
No, it's there. It's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. With the transfer of the images to outcomes, okay, from hospital to hospital, are you already able to send video also? Because sometimes sending only images from one hospital to another doctor or one doctor to another doctor is you don't have sometimes an explanation with the image. So you guys are already using video also, sending video from one hospital to another hospital, and if you are using it, what kind of challenges do you have with the current broadband and so?
So the images firstly are not synced. The images sit in a central repository. And as a doctor, I type in the patient number. Even if I go to the doctor, I'm not saying that. It's some of the central data. It's part of a bigger patient record. And I have access to the entire record of the patient. There's something called ECCR, the electronic continuity care system. Previously, you know it as a discharge summary that you get when you leave the hospital. We've now made that also electronic. So in your patient history are all your discharge notes. So if you had an X-ray at this hospital on this day, there would be a discharge note with your medical diagnosis, your medicine given, and the doctor's notes on your visit. So typically that could suffice. On the topic of video, your investigating candidates, so a doctor at university hospital, a specialist in each office, could then via video be diagnosing the patient anywhere in the world via the system. So if it's about mobility, it's easy because you have a live video of where the person can be diagnosed, or sometimes that doctor needs a conversation with the patient, and that can also be done via video. Yeah, well, the video can travel on the net. We've had a case where a robot was used at Tigerwood, and the robot was used at high infection area, and the robot camera indoors walking around in the ICU was controlled by a professional from Southern University. But some of that was over our effort.
Can I ask you, we spoke earlier about being a consultant. How do we ensure that the intellectual property remains ours, so that when they are not, as you have alluded to earlier on, if that specific vendor is no longer, then that property does not go with that.
So I understand it as follows. I'm not but they will dial into that they will be given the username password that we will monitor, and they will get into the hospital records and into the patient system, and they will look at the images on our side, they will diagnose, and their notes will be saved on our system. So it all becomes part of the patient administration record at the end.
Doesn't it
doesn't, it's not that. They'll pay the patient diagnosis and the complex strategy sometimes. If it's a nuclear diagnosis, it's something or whatever you're patient. And that's something that we do the hospital, the local hospital, and the service provider. But the system, yeah, the system used is the best.
question maybe from me, the most important part of this is to centralize the patient and patient. Now, how do you make sure that maybe from the center, the district hospital, and from the clinics where they have also how are you monitoring the growth of the patient info to make sure that can be centralized, that you know what is happening about? And I'm asking this because in health, it has been a report about how the backlog of loading the patient files. Yeah, manual. No, I'm having to. So that transition has quite some time, and I'm doing it. I'm asking a question based on the sequence to collect data at the end to have that. So
I'll alternate it for you. So typically currently, if I go to a clinic, there's an IT system that the clinic uses. But it's the same system used 5-6 clinics. And it's called the primary healthcare information system. It's a system that was written internally, databases internally. We manage that on behalf of when I say we, innovation management. The other hospitals use a system called Clinicom, which is outsourced. It's a private system, but it sits on computers in our data center for security purposes. So those two systems each use something called the patient master, like an ID number. And every patient gets a unique health ID number, PMI. And that PMI is used and attached to your imaging in fax, your any imaging, any file, anything. And that makes us possible that if we search all the systems in the province, all your records together in one place, every system that they know. So we see a complete per patient based on that patient master. So the systems are already set up to talk to each other, access each other, and go and search in the different databases. That's a data. When we talk about the paper records, they need to be scanned in because there was a time that they weren't. And the archives determines that that patient's medical record must be captured up to 15 years or something like that. So there's a process whereby, and not all the hospitals, mostly the ECM enabled sites like Tylisha, Tigerberg, George Play, George Hospital uses ECM. ECM is a full electronic record. It's not expensive. So the hospital has decided to go sites. As part of the but they are many. There's a lot of records at the level, there's a lot of records at hospital level, and the focus currently, as we understand it in the healthcare system, is more of providing a current service than putting the effort in getting all of those things online. They're making good progress, but that the health department is managing that. So,
like I to an extent I understand the services, but the duplication, I wanted to find out. I know the other side of the feeling, the duplication that is happening, and always you cannot blame the nurses because the patients they go their own treatment. have those limitations. I want to find out on this, do you, on the centralized, because this is quite unique, on the centralized schemes, do you sometimes pick up where you have this limitation? And if that is happening now, how do you make sure that a consultant is going to look at the right info at that point in time?
So that's once again the BMI. Whatever exchange is logged against the patient number that you have. And the patients in the district have a card, and that will be the latest record by date associated. Yes, it is possible that the patient may have come many years ago, but at a different time, not had the ID book with them, and the clerk captured it wrongly. And there's a committee within our that the system then does a search. And if you have the same address and the same ID number, and you've got flags that say these are the same thing, those exceptions are found out to the database and manually check to see whether that's not the same. If it is the same patient, those two records are made into one. Everything wrongly associated with the wrong number moved to the correct number, so that eventually me as a patient will only have one record. So that's also something that all managers, but there's currently we work with PMI. There's a new patient identifier with more checks and balances and more electronic connections to existing data that's available, which will reduce the number of duplications.
Mine is on the use of outsourced service to consultants. So now what I wanted to check is because what normally happens, excellent services always remain in just private instead of improving and providing adequate service, public service. So which becomes a challenge to consultants and also very much expensive. So with the introduction of all these systems that we are phasing in to improve the adequate health system. So what is the possibility in the long run of rigging ourselves consultants and in-source such things so that we would know that it is within the system and not depend on private individuals, which is because where the challenge is the lack of transfer of skills internally within the system, which remains with certain individuals who were in the system but not transferring skills, but they rather choose to retire. And once they retire, they become consultants within the same department and making lots of money. So is there anything in plan in the phasing in of this whole beautiful picture that you've painted?
I can give you my understanding of how the service works. And the service is currently with an existing radiology practice. So they will contract a current practice. So you take away the into one person in the first place. But that current practice must have a certain level of skill that is not present in the health system. Otherwise, it's not worth contracting. And then the procurement follows the normal government-led procurement that all government entities are subject. And so I'd like to believe that the health supply chain management looks at all of those things in past in terms of the specification that they put out. I am aware that George Hospital, Worcester Hospital, and Paul Hospital makes use of outside entities for that. Because otherwise the loan would simply be too big to refer to Tiger and Grootesteen. Because we don't have that capacity that is wired into those agencies. If we had that capacity in the organization, that definitely would not be used. And that's my understanding, and that's important.
We have 30 radiologists, each and every specialities that we do quality reports. So just to give you an example, one day on both CT scanners, we can do in a 12-hour period between 60 to 80 million and CT scan. And each one of the CT scan required. And you saw the images I showed you, how quickly it goes through. That images need to be looked at slice by slice if you want to do that, which is time consuming. And that is only if it's a simple CT scan. If it's a complex case, it takes even longer. So in that regard, you can see the amount of time required to report. In our general X-ray report, in front of your course, you can X-ray 100 patients between 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock. I don't think we can report all of those in one day. So, and the amount of radiologists, us and Tigerberg, I think it's 14 total, and that covers nearly the entire Western Cape Public Health Service. Mitchell's Plain has one radiologist, and they cannot run a 24-hour service and report on every image that is being done. So there is a gap in the amount of radiologists available, and to allow the patient to get the best care is to get that report out, that the next management can happen to that patient. And that's why they will be making just to complement and ensure that it's the
Yes. Can we then therefore say that our patients, our critical patients on, and this is sorry I'm using the word again, in most places perhaps, is at a disadvantage to a patient that is nearer to Paul, because Paul is a district hospital where the service is in secure. But and also in regard to a critical patient who would come after hours, would that patient then be at a disadvantage because the service would not be at that patient's disposal at that time?
I mean, our experience, our entire together, family comes from a very little, they were basically this gets all probably down to they will then go to the explain, assessment, and if they determine that this person maybe needs to come down to tertiary, either bring maybe the person stronger, or is it all person, all properly targeting. So that basically any of these, when we've got a very functional flexible health environment, I mean, we've got a very functional ambulance system. I mean, if the person is really, really critical, we even have the ability to fly them, and stuff like that. And obviously that gets assessed as you go through the system. So it's really, I mean, our record is quite wide in terms of the health environment. And what we put up here is at least the person doesn't have to come all the way now to Tigerberg. Maybe the person is actually okay, they can maybe stay overnight, maybe at Brisbane. They will then take the scan, get it to Tigerberg. Somebody here will actually diagnose. You don't need to appoint a radiologist on that side. And then the report should go through, depending on if they have doctors look at it, or they will actually basically. So everything in the health environment follows the systems approach. And I mean, the quality of care is also
Consistent with the name, the infrastructure and operations center, and it's all our information that we see information stored. How we should get managed to an assessment of the learning does the system advantage a learner number so that that learner could be tracked his schooling phase? Or are we not there yet? Once I posed a question too, I wanted to know, because in my of learners who were not in school during school hours, but they are of school going age. And I asked whether they could then match it with the number of learners who receives a child grant to sort of get to an actual number of learners that are not in school, but they are of school going age, and they're supposed to be in school according to the Constitution. So hence my question.
Typically in grade R,
Yeah.
if the school is a registered institution, but because of other problems in grade 5, say you will get your syllabus on that.
Yes, okay.
And that makes it possible for us research to be done. How many learners coming to our system from the problems as a to check whether those particular learners that refer to are supposed to be on the system. And you can get name or ID number, because that is used in the system data. ID number is but I'm not sure whether the of access to the social child.
They might not.
International system. I mean, those systems are governed by particularly the top building. They would not receive a child. Even if we give them, say, anybody that you check if this is software, they would not. But in the I didn't know how we work. Is that we progressively work towards getting a unique patient number. Alternatively, because might be people that live in the area, but they want access to, let's call it, maybe a hospital. They may falsify some information, whether it's the address or whatever, access, to the health facility. But the department is doing well. Particularly with regards to that unique patient number. And in fact, once you have that, I think you learn a lot in education when you start to see system, actually the system may not be perfect, but we get these information from the child start to when the child takes to grade class. Therefore, we can say X amount of children fall out. We can even say where they fall out. We can also connect it now, particularly now that people now need to register their children before they want to go to high school, and all of that is now also electronic. We suddenly have information about the parent, and about the one parent, the other parent, and where they work, all that stuff. Suddenly we have a lot of information. And I mean, there's about 1.1 million children in the system. Let's say almost 2 per child. So we suddenly have information about 3 million people just because of one system. And now we can start to apply this out across. Say, okay, now these people, Harry Manila, child school, does Harry make use of public health systems? Does Harry make use of other services of government? So that we can actually also understand, who's our client out there that can potentially make use of our service, and that will influence also the reach envelope and all that stuff.
Back to the question, delegation together with national health and provincial health to be invited to the recommendation of success of our company. And that research is still the research paper, especially countries in Africa.
And it's very, very insightful. When we visit hospitals, the health centers, it would be different going forward. And I also want to thank the government for developing what we have and to and works on this system. Thank you very much. My question to you now is different when we reach our access lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for embarking on this.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mayo. The good work that we've done here.